So, like I said, I took some notes, and this is a bit of what was said. Okay, so before they even got to the new movies, they talked, Jamie Lee Curtis talked about being in this franchise for 40 years, in and out of the franchise. And it was pretty interesting because they actually talked about Halloween 78, obviously, and she told the story that we all know of how Mustafa Akkad funded the film through Erwin Yablans, who produced, who hired John Carpenter based on Assault from Precinct 13. John Carpenter brought in Deborah Hill as co-writer and producer, who was his girlfriend at the time, and the rest is history. So she told that story. She told the story of coming back for Halloween 2. It was a direct sequel, and she felt like she owed it to the fans and the franchise. She talked about H2O 20 years later, coming back to that, and why she chose to come back to that to really celebrate the 20th anniversary of her career as well as the franchise. And she really thought that at that time, she was going to be done when she signed on to the film. But in this interview, Jamie Lee actually addresses something that I've never quite heard her address quite as directly as she does in this interview. And so I'm going to tell you what she says. And it's about resurrection and about why resurrection kind of retcons the how resurrection kind of retcons the ending of H2O, um, and how it came to be that Laurie Strode is killed off in the opening moments of Resurrection. So here's what she said at this May 3rd panel on H2O and Resurrection. Jamie Lee Curtis said, quote, "It involved the end of H2O, which I always assumed and understood that it would be the end of Mr. Myers. That was the reason for doing it 20 years later. And it turned out that there was legal maneuvering that we couldn't end Mr. Myers, if you know what I mean. And I was so angry because at this point, we were already in the process of making the movie." Speaking of H2O. She continues, quote, "I said, okay, you now have to pay me a sum of money that all you business people would be very impressed that I demanded for 2 days' work on the next movie," speaking of Resurrection, "where I," meaning Laurie Strode, "had to die. Because if I now have perpetuated the myth that Michael Myers is dead," she means, "unwittingly," she continues, "I felt that then I needed to die. Laurie Strode would not be able to live with herself. So I did that Resurrection movie for money." All right, so that's something there, not with these new films, but with Jamie Lee Curtis. I've never really seen her address that quite so direct. That she did go into H2O with the assumption that this would be the end of the Myers storyline. In production, she becomes made aware that they're definitely going to do a sequel, and this is how he's going to survive. So she realizes, okay, this ending of the movie, they're going to retcon that. They're going to, shocking twist in the next movie. So she plays the only card she's got and says, all right, bring me in long enough to kill off Laurie Strode so that she can take that with her. It sounds like now, and kind of claim that because Laurie Strode has, now, according to Resurrection, as she says, perpetuated the myth. The myth being that Michael Myers was dead, that she killed the wrong man, essentially, and that she couldn't live with herself. Which, again, hearing all of this from her, and you guys tell me if you've heard her speak on this particular issue before, but I thought it was pretty enlightening myself. But that's what she said about H2O and Resurrection, because the interviewer did push her after H2O. She was ready to move on to the Blum produced movies, and this interviewer did actually pull her back and remind her of Resurrection, and at which time she made those statements. All right, so now moving into Halloween 2018, this is what Jason Blum had to say when he was talking about putting together the 2018 Halloween film, which was happening behind the scenes in 2017. Jason Blum says that he first met with Malik Akkad to get him on board with letting Blumhouse do what they consider a Blumhouse version of Halloween. Malik was on board. The next step was to meet with Carpenter, and Blum says that he met with him for 17 minutes in Carpenter's office. And when he left, he didn't think that John was going to say yes. But this is what Jason Blum says. He says that at this meeting with John Carpenter, he was only in his office for 17 minutes. He says at the 15th minute, quote, Jason Blum told Carpenter, quote, look, John, they're making this movie. They're going to make this Halloween, and they're going to make it with or without us. But if they make it with me, I'm making it with you. And if they don't make it with me, I don't want to make it with you. It's totally up to you what you want to do. I actually left, and I was sure he was going to say no, but his agent called me the next day, and he said, you know what? I'll give it a whirl. And so began, for me, a new partnership. We got this terrific writer-director, David Gordon Green, and David, I don't think, would have done it had John not been involved. And it worked out terrifically well for all parties involved, and I'm very proud of the movies. We made 3 of them, and the third one I'm about to see in 2 weeks. I haven't seen it yet, end quote. All right, so right there, Jason Blum revealing that he has not yet seen a early cut of Halloween Ends. This was recorded just about a week ago. Like I said, it was last Tuesday, last Tuesday, May 3rd, when they recorded this. So it's been about a week since he made that statement. So that means next week he's expecting to see Halloween Ends for the first time. First cut, early cut, director's cut. We don't know, but Jason's not seen it yet. He's going to see it next week. That's the schedule. That, again, kind of lines up with when we're thinking a trailer's going to drop. A few weeks after that, they're going to want to have that final theatrical cut more or less locked, I think. And from everything we've seen in these previous films, again, just using them as kind of our scale for judging, David Gordon Green does not take a lot of time shooting, editing, and finishing his films. He's not one of these filmmakers that works right up to 3 days before the theatrical release on tinkering with the film. It sounds like he gets everything done, turns it in, moves on to his next project. So I don't think they're going to be editing very long, and I think it's totally realistic that by end of June, late June, this film is going to be pretty much locked for its release, and they're going to be able to cut those trailers no problem, if not before then. But that's not all that was said. Now, this is something else that Jamie Lee Curtis said that I've had to remind you guys, not so much you guys watching Michael Myers Monday Live, but I feel like I have to remind some viewers sometimes and just some people when they get so obsessed with, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis said that fans may not like this, or she said this is going to upset people. And this is Jamie Lee Curtis again, just a few days ago, reiterating what I've reminded you guys about before. Jamie Lee Curtis on not being a horror fan. She says, quote, there's something about these movies that people love. Now, I don't love them. I scare easily, and I just can't imagine turning over my hard-earned after-tax dollars to be scared. So it's not a genre I love, and it's the genre that's given me my entire creative life. So she lives this dichotomy of the genre that she does not love is the genre that has given her her entire creative life. So she clearly recognizes that. She continues. She says, quote, the reason I did it is because David wrote something that dealt with trauma, dealt with the actual reality of what happens when someone has been haunting you, stalking you, the concentric circles of traumatic experiences that someone carries. Those wounds do not heal. We make these movies, people scream, they go home, but these characters, Laurie Strode has lived for a very long time in the hearts and minds of people, and I really liked the fact that you, speaking to Blum, she continues, were able to identify the very thing that is the byproduct of being terrorized by someone, which is trauma. and that the movie was about that. And we became very lucky because the movie coincided with the women's Me Too movement, and a lot of oppressed women were standing up and saying no more, and Laurie Strode stood up and said no more. I think that sort of confluence of those two things certainly catapulted the movie to success that I'm not sure any of us imagined. End quote. And Jason Blum offers one more interesting quote um, when talking about the end of this trilogy, which both Blum and Curtis very repeatedly call this is a trilogy. This is what they state numerous times. But they are asked if this is truly the end, because these last two films have made a lot of money at the box office, hugely successful, as Jamie Lee Curtis says, more successful than they imagined. So is it truly the end? Jason Blum's response, reiterating again something that we're all fairly aware of here, but this is Jason Blum's exact quotes. He says, quote, "The rights revert to our friend Malik, and what he does now, I would be hard pressed to believe that at some point he won't look at those rights and think maybe, but who knows? Maybe it will be a TV show next. Who knows? But we contracted for 3 movies, and this is our last one." End quote. All right, so lots of interesting comments to come out of that. A little bit of Halloween ends, a little bit of post Halloween ends, thoughts from Jason Blum. And again, I know that is a popular topic, and a lot of people ask me and ask us here, and it's a headline on a lot of videos, a lot of articles. What happens after Halloween ends? And yeah, we can't help but think about it a little bit and speculate a little bit, and that's all fine and good to an extent. But I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in these next 5 months thinking about and really discussing a whole lot about what's going to happen to this franchise after Halloween ends. I mean, we got 5 months until Halloween ends. I want to enjoy the anticipation. I want to enjoy the marketing. I want to enjoy all of this that's going to come and happen over these next few weeks and really just soak it in. And then after it's over, I got a feeling we're going to have plenty of time to speculate and think and discuss and just brainstorm on what might happen after. Like Jason Blum said, they're contracted for 3 movies. This is the 3rd one in that contract, so they're done with that contract. What happens after that is anybody's guess. I know we've all got theories. It's interesting that he throws the TV thing out there, but it might just be because he's on Twitter a lot and he sees a lot of speculation about a TV show. Maybe that's where he got that idea. I don't think it's much more than that. Again, very interesting to me personally about the resurrection stuff with Jamie Lee Curtis, about how she kind of forced their hand and said, "All right, let's kill off Laurie Strode since you're not going to kill off Michael Myers." And again, maybe I'm out of the loop on that and never heard that bit before, but I find that kind of interesting. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on all of those comments from the recent, what was that? It was the Milken Institute that hosted that panel on with Jamie Lee Curtis and Jason Blum.